Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
That's right, I'm back. And hello again, my podcasting friends. Have you heard about this?
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
Let's do it again.
I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Today we're going to talk a little bit more about radio. We're going to have a little history lesson today.
That's one small step for man.
I have the answer. Welcome to the Pat White Show. Let's get into it.
This is Sparta!
Well, welcome into this edition of the Pat White Show. Today, we're going to be talking about health insurance and how it affects you and how it affects me and how it affects everybody else in America because, well, frankly, we're all in this thing together. Here's the deal. If you remember back around 2013, 2014, the Democrats were running the country. They had control of the House and the Senate, and they had Barack Obama as the president. They were able to do whatever the heck they wanted to do, and so they decided to come up with a health care plan to take care of people that, well, frankly, financially, were on the lower end of the scale. And that's perfectly fine. I understand the concept. So what they did was they developed something called Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act as it was called. It was a really thick thing. I mean, it was really thick. Trouble was nobody knew what was in it. And the problem was that they passed it without anybody seeing what was in the thing. And remember, Nancy Pelosi, she was the Speaker of the House at the time. She said, well, we can't know what's in it until we pass it. Well, that was the plan. You couldn't know what was in it until it was passed. Nobody in the Republican Party voted for it. The only ones to vote for it were the Democrats, but they were in power. Democracy, if you will. They were in power and said, no, we're passing this. Well, here's what came out of the thing. All right, so they were going to give affordable health care to people under the age of, or under the income level of, say, $150,000 a year combined income. That'd be like a husband and wife both working and earning about $65,000 a year. They would get the Obama health care, the ACA health care, they called it, and other people called it Obamacare, and they would finally get their health insurance. And why? Well, because it changed the rules for health insurance. Now, you could be 26 years of age and still be on your parents' health care program. So you got somebody who was, say, it used to be 21, well, they moved it up to 26, all right? 26, you can stay on mom and dad's health care program. They decided to live in mom and dad's house. They're still doing it today. Well, the second thing was the government mandated. Mandated means like you will. The government mandated, they said, okay, everybody has to have health insurance. Everybody, you, me, you name it, everybody had to have health insurance, and you had to prove it to the IRS. So you had to fill out the form saying, yeah, here's what I've got, here's what I'm doing, here's the company I'm with. Everybody had to prove to the Internal Revenue Service that you, in fact, had health care. Well, at that point, everybody had to get health insurance. Everybody did. And if you had a previous a condition that the health insurance companies would not pass or would not accept, well, those conditions went by the wayside. Whatever you previously had, you were going to be covered by your insurance. So the non-insurable people suddenly became insured. All right. So what happens? Everybody has to have health insurance coverage. Okay, fine. And the government's going to have Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act for the people under a certain level of income. And they said, I think it was around under $150,000 family income. They could qualify for Obamacare, and they had to go on a network, on an internet site that cost a boatload of money, an internet site to pick out the plan that they wanted. And that was the plan they were under. All right, sounds pretty fine in the beginning, didn't it? Well, then what happened was the Congress back around 2015 said, the healthcare companies are starting to raise the policy prices for anybody who was on Obamacare or regular people who weren't. I was not on Obamacare. My wife and I, we didn't have it. We had our own insurance policy. But even our insurance policy started to climb up in cost. We weren't necessarily using it, but turns out everybody's health insurance policies were going up. Why? Well, because everybody had to have insurance and pre-existing conditions now were covered. Now the insurance companies had to pay for all this. So what happened? Well, I want you to take a look at this graph, and this is the reason I've got this up on the screen for you to see. The Obama plan premiums, now what it costs you for your insurance every year. Here's the deal. Take a look down here at 2014. This is when everything started to come into them. Now we got three different graphs here. You got the premium plan for someone who's 50 years of age. That's the ACA benchmark plan for a premium. Okay, that's pretty much the top of the line. Not everybody has that, but understand we got to have a number to work with. All right, that's what then. The dark blue line, that's the average employer-based individual plan premium. So if you're one of those millions of people that had your employer's insurance rather than Obamacare, as they called it, because that only affected about 25 million people. So you 25 million with Obamacare. Everybody else, you and me, we all have our own insurance through a company, through whatever it is. That's where we got our insurance. All right. And the third one, the light blue line, is the Consumer Price Index. That's kind of what it costs to exist, okay? That's like the level of inflation, how much things cost as we go on. So we're starting here at 2014. All right, see right there? 2015, well, it's starting to rise a little bit. There it goes. And suddenly the Affordable Care of the ACA benchmark, looks what happens to the price going up. By 2017, yes, it had gone up a little bit on the Consumer Price Index, but take a look at the employers. Well, heck, the employers thing had gone up about 16%. Well, same time, the Affordable Care Act insurance for people on that 25 million we're talking about, theirs had gone up roughly 32%. Premiums had increased to 32%. And the health insurance company said, oh, yeah, and you also have the, you got to have the prepaid stuff. You got to have the deductible. And the deductible, they were raising up all along. So here's what's happened. 2017 up to and 2018, 2019, everything is skyrocketing. And take a look at the Obamacare cost. By 2018, it had jumped up 78%. All right, now, when we reached 2020, COVID hit. All right, new president, COVID hit, and the government said, you know what? We're going to not limit it just to people at $150,000 in income. What we are going to do, we're going to open it up to virtually anybody who wants to get it can qualify for Obamacare. Whether you're making six figures, you're making $500,000, you're making $750,000, you get Obamacare. You can get that premium, and the government decided, here's the problem. Turns out Obamacare was a lot more expensive than we thought. So what did Washington do? They said, okay, let's create subsidies and we will help to offset the cost of the health insurance we've got for those 25 million people. Not you, the 25 million people on Obamacare. Let's subsidize it. So every year they wrote the insurance companies, health insurance companies, a check. And that check was for billions of dollars to subsidize what the people were on Obamacare, the 25 million, what they were paying. All right, 25 million people on Obamacare. All right, they were subsidizing it with your money. Now, you had your own insurance policy, you were doing your own thing, paying your own thing, but you were also paying for the people on Obamacare with your taxpayer dollars were being sent to the insurance companies. Well, now the insurance companies knew that everybody had to have health insurance. Everybody, you, me, you name it, everybody had to have it by law. So what happened was they started raising their premiums. And they started making money hand over fist because by having the $10,000 deductible, people couldn't afford to go to the doctor. I mean, think about it. You weren't going to get your insurance kicking in until you tapped up at 10 grand. Well, not everybody's going to spend 10 grand, and not everybody can afford to spend 10 grand, and especially the people on the 25 million people on Obamacare. Their premiums are going up and up, and sure enough, take a look. Like I said, by 2019, 2018, the premiums for them had gone up 78%. So then in 2020, when the government says, okay, everybody gets Obamacare who wants it, really rich people started to say, Well, why should I have the old insurance that I'm paying money on? Let's get Obamacare. The government's going to help pay for it. And so what happened was, well, check the lines, folks. The consumer price index started climbing as it always does. That's inflation. And we can talk why inflation happened. But you can see it going on to 21, and by the time 2025 came around, the consumer price index had jumped up 39% from where it was clear back in 2014. Now, the average employer-based insurance, it had gone up 68%. That's me. I don't have Obamacare. I've got, regular insurance, and my wife and I do. Our insurance had gone up 68% because the insurance companies are saying, we got more people. We got to insure everybody in America, and everybody's got their little problems, and we're going to increase the deductibles, and people have to pay a lot of money. But those 25 million people who are on Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, their rates had gone up 129%. 129% in less than 10 years. And the government was still paying them a check every year for billions of dollars. Why? Well, the health insurance companies are making money hand over fist. They are literally, their value has gone through the roof. What used to be the cost of a share for United Healthcare was like $40. Now it's like $300 or somewhere in that range. Because the company has become so valuable because they have so much money. So you're saying to yourself, well, there's the problem, but they're going to cut off the subsidies. Yeah. The president says we're going to cut them off, and he said what we're going to do is we're going to take that money and mail it to every one of those people on Obamacare, health savings account. They can choose their own people. Is that going to help people like me who's not on Obamacare but has employer stuff? Well, I don't know. I don't really believe it will. But getting rid of the subsidies, and now the Democrats, through Chuck Schumer, says, well, let's extend the paying these healthcare companies for 3 years. What's that going to accomplish? Nothing. Healthcare companies are simply going to keep raising their rates because they can and because they are becoming so incredibly wealthy you can't believe it. Now, I tell you all of this because now you're wondering what's going on. Well, the subsidies are due to end at the end of December. And people are saying, my health insurance is going to go up 100% on Obamacare. Yes, that's 25 million people. I can't emphasize that enough. There's 330 million people in the country, and everybody has to have insurance, but 25 million people are getting Obamacare out of 330 million. And their premiums have gone up. But now people are on Obamacare who really shouldn't be there. It's only designed for people in the lower income strata. But because you and me, by law, have to have health insurance, I always have had it. But people who didn't, younger people who didn't. And younger people now under the age of 26 said, hey, I'm staying on mom and dad's policy. I can stay until I'm 26. That's exactly what they're doing. So now you understand what's going on, folks. Will it happen in December? Will the subsidies end? I can't tell you. I don't know. But there's a quick look at what's happening for those 25 million people, and the health insurance companies are the ones making money. Do they need to be controlled? The answer to that question is yes. Do they need to have their profits brought back down? The answer is yes. But short of nationalizing them, what are you going to do? Don't know. But maybe the health care plan, by giving the money to people, say put in your health savings account, maybe that will make the health insurance companies start bidding to get people's business, and they won't get an automatic check from the government, which they just say, man, we found money. They're throwing money at us. That's taxpayer dollars. And folks, we got a $33 trillion debt, and it gets bigger every single day. And tossing 60 or whatever it is billion dollars to the health insurance companies every year to pay for 25 million people's subsidies. That's what you're dealing with. Now you know what's going on. You got a complaint? I suggest you contact your congressman, you just contact your senators, and just say, hey, I looked at the graph, I saw what's going on here. Why are 25 million people being subsidized by the rest of the American populace? Because that's exactly what you're doing. If you have any questions about that, feel free to ask. But now you know a little more than you knew before. That's all I got, and now you know. Well, for any of you folks who ever listened to me back in the days when I was on WOWO, I wasn't into too much political stuff. Yes, occasionally I dabbled into it, but more often than not, I did, things that I thought was interesting, things that were going on in our city and in our state, not so much necessarily anything out of Washington, D.C. And ultimately, when I was let go by WOWO, they said, well, they wanted to go more political. And they brought in someone who's a lot more political than I was. And that's fine. That's business. In radio, if you haven't been fired, you will be. Just telling you the way it is. But in all those times, I just didn't cover a whole lot of stuff. They said, hey, be just like, follow Rush Limbaugh, do the same thing that he does. I didn't do it. That just wasn't me. I had my own style, my own thing I wanted to talk about, and fortunately, people wanted to hear it. But speaking of politics, well, now I'm going to get into it just a little bit. Bear with me, if you will. It seems that in Washington, D.C., the Epstein files, Jeffrey Epstein, remember him? They talked about him? Well, a lot of that stuff has been released. And gee whiz, all those people that are harboring and saying, oh, we got stuff on Trump, he did this, he did that. Suddenly all that conversation, all that words, all that buffoonery, in my opinion, has pretty much dried up. Some people are even resigned when information about them being involved with the Epstein situation has come to light. And they've actually quit their jobs because they were embarrassed or whatever. Larry Summers is one that I want to bring up. I'm not talking about him, but he was one of the ones who stepped down. Well, the House Oversight Committee, headed up by James Comer, their job is to oversight things that go on out there that are not bad, really bad, and look into them and to see if there's something that they can do about it in Congress. Well, back many months ago, Mr. Comer issued out a list of people they were going to ask for depositions. Now you say, well, deposition, what's a deposition? Deposition was in there, you get called in and attorneys from both sides could do a deposition to ask you questions. All sorts of questions involving a pending case that could very well go to trial. If the case goes to trial, the information they garner from a deposition asking you questions, that's where they get the questions in the trial. That's where they learn stuff, what you did, what you didn't do, whatever. So they're asking for depositions from a number of people. Now, they've gotten some, Bill Barr, among others, and some of what we call the low-hanging fruit involving the Epstein situation. But some of the names they said we want to interview, two of them stuck out. They're supposed to be interviewed in October. Well, here we are in December, and those two have not been interviewed at all. Who are they? Turns out, Bill and Hillary Clinton. Yep, they were told they were going to be interviewed, but boy, when the interview came time for them, they said, we are so tied up with stuff going on. We are so busy. We got things going on. We just can't make it for that deposition. Sorry. And they backed out. Well, Mr. Comer from the House Committee said that, you ain't going to do that. We're going to demand you come in and demand. And of course, the Clintons are lawyered up. Be honest with you. Everybody lawyers up in Washington, D.C. That's standard operating procedure. You get lawyered up. And they were lawyered up. And so their lawyers negotiating with the House Oversight Committee said, well, tell you what we'll do. We will answer written questions. You give us a question, we'll give you a written response. And Mr. Comer said, that ain't going to cut it because a written response is not under oath. Now keep that in mind, folks. A written response is not under oath. And if you lie to Congress, well, you know what can happen. If they choose to, they can put you in jail. Some people have gone to jail, others haven't got anything. But in this case, Bill and Hillary. And they want to talk to them and see exactly what was your involvement with Mr. Epstein. What did you do? I mean, Mr. Clinton, he was on the Lolita Express, over a dozen times? Apparently there's a picture hanging in one of the buildings over on the island that Epstein has that... I've heard about it. I've seen pictures of it, but I'm going, I don't know if that's real or not, but I've heard. So what's been going on? What's been involved with this, with the people in the Epstein situation? Mr. Comer and his committee want to know. And like I said, Hillary and Bill said, we ain't going to do it. We'll send you written answers. Comer said, you're going to show up. Well, guess what? They are both now been subpoenaed to show up. You're going, okay, they're going to show up. They're going to have to answer questions in a deposition. These are closed-door depositions, by the way. So you're not going to sit there. They're not sitting in front of a congressional committee and they each get 5 minutes kind of crap that you've seen going on, okay? 5 minutes, you can talk, whatever. This is a deposition. We're asking questions. And they could be used down the line for, well, whatever. Well, here's what's going to happen, folks. And then we've seen this before. When in Washington, D.C., if you're called in for a deposition and you don't want to answer any questions, you develop a case of forgetfulness. That's right. Your memory goes absolutely blank. And you're going to say, I don't recall. Gee, my memory fades me. I don't remember. I don't recall. You're going to hear the phrase, I do not recall, more times than you can count. If there were a drinking game for every time you heard the term, I don't recall, that'd be some people dying of alcohol poisoning. That's how bad it is. This is the way it works in Washington, D.C., folks. This is how the game is played. The game is played, if you don't want to answer a question, your attorneys tell you, forget everything. Don't remember anything, because they can't get you, because they can't keep pushing you. You say, I don't recall. Well, let me help you to recall. Maybe they can do that at a trial. Say, well, let's bring in this evidence here to see if we can't shake your memory a little bit. But in a deposition, you can deny remembering anything. My guess is that's what's going to happen if and when Bill or Hillary do show up for their depositions behind closed doors. Now, could I be wrong? Could they spill the beans on everything? No, they aren't. See, if you take them down, they're probably going to want to take everybody else down, and nobody in Washington wants to be taken down because it's all a dirty little party. One doesn't want to take down the other because, well, then the other person's going to take them down. Evil is as evil does. And once you get blood, and once you get a blood shit from somebody in Washington, you know something really nasty and really dirty, you can use that, keep yourself out of trouble, and maybe make yourself a whole lot of money. So, Bill and Hillary are scheduled to be deposed. Will it happen? Well, we don't know. And Hillary is saying, what's she got to do with Epstein? Well, a lot of things that were going on. His squeeze, Ghislaine, I believe it is, she showed up at every one of the Clinton major functions. What's her deal? What's she connected to the Clintons for? Interesting. So how is Ghislaine tied to the Clintons and Hillary? Something to be asked. All of those things are part of what's going to be coming up in the depositions scheduled for, well, this month. And will they forget? Oh, they won't forget. They'll be there. But their memories, when asked questions, will definitely sink into, I don't recall. Just watch, folks. That's probably what's going to happen because they want the entire thing to disappear. And they themselves want to be exonerated in every way, shape, or form. I did nothing. I see nothing. That's what we're dealing with. Now you know. Well, last night, America had a chance to watch what many will believe was the most exciting college football game we have seen in ages. For me personally, I'm going to tell you, that was a better game than watching Notre Dame play Miami back in the Catholic versus the Convicts game back in the 1980s. Jimmy Johnson was coaching Miami. But last night's game, man, that was something to behold. I sat there riveted for, over 3 hours, sitting there going, oh my gosh, I don't know which way it's going to come out. It went back and forth. You never knew who was going to win. And finally, at the end, Indiana prevailed by the score of 13-10. Now, let's be honest. Ohio State was number one, has been number one for many years, and is considered one of the best football teams in America. I don't doubt that one iota. But every once in a while, something's going to happen. And last year, if you remember, Indiana lost 2 games. One was to Notre Dame, and the second game was to Ohio State. Those 2 teams ended up fighting it out for the national championship, and obviously Ohio State was victorious. All right, that was last year. But Indiana, well, they decided they were going to come back this year. Even more. Coach Cignetti, who is, Well, he looks about as driven as anything I've ever seen. Said, we're going to keep on coming on. We've got a score to settle. And last night, in front of, 80-some thousand people, I believe, in the dome, or in the Lucas Oil, and millions, and I mean millions of people, probably one of the biggest games, college football ratings ever, were sitting there by their TV watching the game. I have friends of mine who went down there, got 2 tickets, cost them $600 a pop for a ticket. Well, they went. God bless them, they got to see something cool. Me, I ain't spending $600 for a ticket. Sorry. Got to watch it at home, took it easy, had a good time, sat in my lazy chair, and never fell asleep. It was that kind of game. 13-10. So, how to work out? Well, here is the final matchup. According to the committee that determines the top 12 teams, take a look and see who the top 12 teams are. And there you're going to take a look at it and see exactly what it is. And you're going to see, guess who didn't make it? Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish did not make it, probably because they lost to Miami in the first game of the season. Look who came in, James Madison. Wow, unbelievable. Tulane Green Wave. Teams in there you hadn't seen before. But if you take a look, the number 1 and number 2 slots have, flipped. Does that mean they could meet again if they both make it to the national championship? Man, that would be a big game if it does. I mean, a really big game. But let me tell you what happened after the game was over last night. Apparently, a petition was started by Ohio State, a number of Ohio State fans, and they started signing this petition, and it went to thousands of people. And I want you to take a look at this, what they said. Take a look at this. It was fueled by what they said was emotion and controversy. Okay, what were they upset about? Well, they believed they lost not stemmed from the gameplay. They said, okay, no, game was played. They played on there. They played their hearts out. Everybody played. But Ohio State lost. And they said the reason was the following. The officials were biased. Well, I've been able to claim that against certain other officials all the time, and more often than not, I'm wrong, but that was one of the claims. Secondarily, key calls unfavorably favored Indiana. Hey, I saw calls on both sides. That first call against first play, flattened the quarterback of Indiana. Yeah, apparently it was legal, but dang, come on, man. Several penalties against Ohio State were manufactured. I don't know about you, but manufacturing calls? I saw some calls. I saw a call where an Indiana person was grabbing the quarterback, but the quarterback got away, grabbed him by the face mask. There was no face mask called against the folks over at Ohio State. Hey, things happen in a game. Referees are human. And Indiana had allegedly engaged in bribery to influence the outcome of the game. Woo! Well, apparently a lot of people signed this petition. And by the time the petition reached its peak, there were thousands and thousands of signatures. And what they were demanding from the NCAA, take a look. Review the referee's decisions. Okay. Investigate Indiana for alleged misconduct. All right, fine, do that. And consider overturning or nullifying or even replaying the game. Whole lot of people signed this. Trust me, they did. Well, NCAA looked at it and said, they said, here's the deal. After reviewing the claims, the NCAA, video, and the referee's reports, the NCAA said following. No evidence of bribery or misconduct by Indiana was recorded anywhere. 2, no refereeing violations capable of affecting the game's outcome happened. 3, no justification for overturning or altering the result. And they said the game fell within the rules. And the game is valid, final, and unchallenged. All right, so what happened? Well, here's what happened. As a result, a bunch of Ohio State fans said, with the heat of the moment, we were upset, we were angry, we didn't have the numbers right. Frankly, we were just pissed we lost. So they signed a petition. Everybody's entitled to do that, folks. Everybody is entitled to do that if you want to. The truth is, rarely do we see things happen. Yes. Now, with the Well, the concept of NIL, name, image, and likeness, new thing, paying players. We've seen what's happened with cheating in the NBA, folks. You've seen it. You've seen players are, making millions of dollars, but are so addicted to gambling for a few $100,000 they're willing to shave points. Point shaving has happened in the years ago in the NCAA. It's happened. It's happening now in the NBA. Big gambling schemes. They say it has to do with organized crime. And anytime you get betting, and now understand something. You can now get an app on your phone. Whatever you want. You can get a phone app. Just like, get everyone you need. Gamble on your phone. Because now gambling is now apparently okay nationwide. Everybody can gamble now. Give them $5, they give you $50 worth of money to gamble with. It's a sucker bet. But people are doing it. And anytime you get gambling involved, organized crime and bad people are going to get in there and try to shave points, do whatever they can so they get the way to win even more money. And sadly, the players are human. And many of them are addicted to their gambling themselves, and they're willing to do things for money. It's the world we live in, folks. I hate the idea that gambling has become so pernicious in our society, and now even the Major League, the NFL. NFL has their own gambling site. Everything is fine. Everything is gamble, gamble, gamble. Didn't used to be that way, but it is today. And unfortunately, you're going to see things happen. But what happened last night between Indiana University and the Ohio State University? See, I'm being polite. What happened last night was one hell of a game. And I'm happy to say I got to watch it, and so many other people did. I didn't watch it down in Indianapolis because I ain't paying $600 a ticket. But it was one of the greatest football games I've seen. And maybe it was retribution for all the years Ohio State has come in and steamrolled Indiana. I remember when my kids went down to Indiana University. Nobody went to the games. About the only people at the games were the cheerleaders. And some of them didn't want to be there. But now the stadium is full. They're going to spend millions of dollars upgrading the stadium, make it really cool. Will they be able to repeat what they did in the last 2 years? I don't know. Will Coach Cignetti be there forever? Who knows? Everything's flexible, folks. But right now, one moment in time, we had that one moment. And that moment was a chance to see Indiana University championship in what? Forever? Finally win one. And do it on national TV in prime time for all America to see? It makes you wonder how many young high school students, football players, are saying, dang, I want to go to that school. I want to be under that coach. Will it help? Heaven only knows. Will it hurt? I don't think so. But right now, place and time, Indiana University has put itself on the map as a school to be reckoned with. No longer a laydown. When they play anybody, that can be a good game. Now, there are people who said, well, their schedule was lousy. It was with a bunch of cream puffs. Okay, say what you want. Oregon, I don't think, was a cream puff because Oregon's in the top 12. Oregon's in the big dance. Ohio State's in the big dance. So, we'll see what happens. So now we've got the NCAA championship coming up. Gives us something to watch in the remainder of December and going into January and when you get close to the Super Bowl. Something to keep you occupied during the cold days of winter. And believe me, we've got some cold days of winter because I believe this year Indiana is going to see a winter like they haven't seen in a very long time. Just my opinion. But football, man, it was enjoyable to watch, and I have a smile on my face and a song in my heart. Only because I spent all my money putting my daughters through Indiana University. At least I'm getting some pleasure finally. And that's what I have to say, and now you know.